Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Virtual Racing Compound. My name is Hasse Rømer, joined by the brilliant Ed May as usual. And we're here for round 5 of the Sunday GT Masters. Our very, very first visit to Fuji, basically, and the mountain, the volcano that lays in the background. Let's hope it erupts in nothing but some good racing spectacle here tonight. Of course, a thank you to Advanced SIMRACING for helping us along. And with that said, Edward, Fuji, the first broadcast that I've done here, a track that I know really well from other sims, from other games, but a new addition to iRacing. What do you think we can expect from this one tonight?
I think we're going to expect some excellent racing here. It's an interesting circuit because obviously you've got the first couple of sectors where it's all down to the downforce, and you need to have a car set up with a fairly high wing angle compared to various other circuits. You want to maximize the downforce pretty much throughout the circuit. But then you've got that long start-finish straight where all of that downforce you've hooked onto the car to get it nice and stable throughout the tight twisty bits that we're going to watch Nicholas and Charlie Nilsson come through at the moment. It's currently out on track, just negotiating with some of these tight turns, and it's interesting because, of course, a lot of the drivers will then suffer a lot down the straights and will open it up massively for plenty of straight line speed slipstreaming.
Yeah, and that's basically what it's all about here, is hanging on through the twisty bits. We spoke about it as well coming into it, the whole approach in setup. Are you going to go for max top speed, or it hardly even pays off, does it? Because you basically need the downforce for every other bit than the start-finish straight here.
Yeah, exactly. Just looking at the tires, I was watching Charlie Nilsson off. He was through the middle sector and was very quick. Purple sector 2, and then out of the final sector, a personal best. Seen him go just a little bit shy of Gaston Messeroni's best time in the session. Good to see Gaston finally back on form. He's been a little bit lackluster, I think, in terms of his pace. Not really in the picture for the race victories the last couple of rounds, but seemingly back on form. Patrick Gannon as well. Good to see he's still carrying on his good turnover pace from the past couple of rounds, obviously getting his first race victory at Detroit Belle Isle and following up with an excellent battle with Charlie Nilsson. Unfortunately, though, Patrick Gannon had to settle for second place in that battle as Charlie Nilsson came through to win his first race of the season last time out at the Nürburgring.
Absolutely so, and it was a stunner indeed. Speaking of which, we're going to go over the championship standings after said round at the Nürburgring as we're approaching halfways around this season. This actually is the halfway point of the season. In the pro standings, it's Remco Barlow of Coanda Racing who leads, but by 12 points only, ahead of Patrick Gannon for RPM Racing. Then two other Coanda drivers, which is Gaston Messeroni and Nicolas Cucato, the two Argentines ahead of Charlie Nilsson. But the second through fifth place, my apologies, Edward, separated by 6 points, and first through fifth, that is, separated by no more than 18 points in the end. So everything still to play for, still an open field of contestants going to be battling it out through these final 5 rounds of racing. It's going to be an interesting one indeed. In AM, we've got Alfredo Tricarici leading by 16 points ahead of Ari Sherwood. And then Darren Fellows, who's been quick but lacking that slight bit of consistency in the races itself. Third with 124 points there. 22 points clear of the next driver, which is Matt Maddox, and then Tony Fender Linden fifth in these standings. Team standings are Coanda all over the place, really, leading the Independents, which have been scoring as a team. That's funny to see. And then Virtual Racing Compound in third. With that said, Edward, it's about to take over 20 seconds, and we'll have 15 minutes of qualifying.
Yes, exactly, and it's going to be very exciting to see who's going to come out on top in qualifying. Obviously, Gaston Messeroni did set the fastest time of the session, but that was done a little bit earlier on. Track temperature has been starting to ramp up just a touch. It was 19 degrees when we were looking at it just a little while earlier, but I think now it's starting to climb up into the 20s. Now you can see 21 degrees, so it's getting a little bit warmer out there. That means that drivers will really have to focus on the opening moments of qualifying. As the track temperature will only increase, that makes it harder and harder to match and improve your lap times as the circuit gets a little bit less grippy. So we're going to have to watch a huge deluge of cars making their way out of the pits now. It's basically a battle to get your laps in as early as possible in this open qualifying session. Nick McLaughlin, first car out on track, it seems. And we're going to see what the virtual racing compound driver can do in his Ferrari. And we did touch a little bit before we went live, Hasse, but we can touch on it again now. These turbocharged cars are really going to benefit from the higher altitude that we have here at Fuji. If you're there, Hasse, I don't think
my
he is.
apologies.
So,
a slight hiccup. I was actually just speaking into a muted microphone. It does happen, even for the best time to time. Anyways, I was just actually saying that you're probably going to be right with that one. I think we're going to see the Ferrari being strong here. I'd expect to see the BMW on a stride as well, and maybe to see the V10 powered Audis to struggle a little bit more than we're used to.
yeah, potentially it's something that's going to be a thing on drivers' minds. We don't have any. In fact, the only, I think, naturally aspirated engine we are seeing is that of Stephen Orels in the Porsche. He's not actually taken to the circuit on qualifying, so who knows that he's going to be down a touch on power. But of course, the Porsche are very good with a high downforce setup. The car has been much more improved in terms of its stability, especially with all that weight towards the rear. It's been made a little bit more planted all around with a bit more front downforce to stop it sort of losing grip and sliding around. So that's really going to benefit them. But here we go, on board for a lap at the Fuji circuit. Take us away, Hasse.
Yes, indeed, and one of the longest start-finish straights we'll see, over 1 kilometer in length, about that 100-meter mark, heavy on the brakes, and into turn one, aiming for the late apex. I think Nick McLaughlin would have liked to have gotten that a little bit better. Could have gotten early on the throttle here, full on through the right-hand kink, and then into turn 3, the left-hander here. Just a slight lift, taking as much as the curb as you can. Easy to use the exit there, and then this corner's always been a tricky one as you're trying to slow down, and then keeping the car sort of right. I don't want to go too far left for the slow left-hander here. Down into second, up through the gears. Again, a heavy acceleration zone, but while you're turning, which makes it very, very tricky car setup, all important. Through the kinks, right, and then heavy on the brakes again for the chicane and into the very technical final sector. This is a sector that will have caused a headache or two. It can be so difficult to figure out just how to make the car traverse this section of the track quickly indeed. But it is possible, and it's all a question of patience really, and trying to let the car roll as much as you can, trying to let it hook up and not understeer wide here. And now the final turn, so important as well, as you're going to see Nick McLaughlin aiming for the late apex again, early on the throttle, and then heavy on it all the way down as we've completed a lap of Fuji.
Here we go then, Nick McLaughlin, as he's going to come up to a line and break the timing beam. What will that do? What benchmark will be laid down for everyone else? He flashes the lights, so he thinks he might be all right. It's a 37.45, so a little bit quicker than the AM driver, Darren Fallows, who's put in a brilliant lap here. Nick McLaughlin, I think, thinking the tyres are only really good for one lap, so comes off into the pits. Very fresh set of tyres. Remco Barlow goes top, but not until Charlie Nilsson blows it out of the water 7 tenths quicker than the Coanda Racing driver there. So the independent goes top of the standings. And, I mean, that's a big statement, isn't it? After what we saw at the Nürburgring, he is certainly on form. Martin de Jong, a driver that I was highlighting to you, Hasse, just before the broadcast, because I'd seen him in the World GT series, raced against him, and he was very quick, a little bit inconsistent, but he's got a lot more experience here in recent times than certainly many other drivers here on this circuit. And I was thinking that might pay dividends, and it's certainly seeming so for the time being, as he is second fastest and provisionally on the front row.
Yeah, but it's one of those tracks where it will have paid off any time spent on Gran Turismo as a youngster or whatever, getting to know the place, because it hasn't really been featured in too many sims across the board, really. I'm not too sure where you would have run into this track otherwise. Probably exists as a mod out there for a Assetto Corsa somewhere, but
yeah.
But certainly not the most used track in the world of sim racing, and certainly no Nordschleife in that regard.
Yeah, if my memory serves right, I think the only other circuit I've seen this on in sim is not Assetto Corsa, is obviously in the Assetto Corsa as a mod, but also in Project Cars 2.
That's
true, that's the only other time I've seen it in another sim. Which is mind-boggling, to be fair, because it is a very popular circuit, especially in the Japanese Super GT scene. This is like one of the highlights of that calendar year and that sort of season of motorsport for them. Does give some excellent racing, and I mean, we've had some brilliant races over the years here in Formula One as well. It's
and endurance racing,
of course.
Endurance racing.
Oh, absolutely! When the World Endurance Championship made their trip to here, it was brilliant, wasn't it? Changeable conditions, which is something you tend to get a lot of in this part of the world, but makes it all the more exciting. And tell you what, you can get excited for when rain is coming to iRacing, because that will certainly be brilliant to have around this very technical circuit. You could just imagine the way the water is going to fall down and up, the elevation changes throughout this area. It's going to be absolutely wonderful. Look at this slow outlap, though, from Martin de Jong. Wants his tyres in the best condition possible for his flying lap. Charlie Nilsson, personal best through Sector 1. Now, this is something to watch out for, because he was already on pole position. Lost a little bit of time, actually, previously on his first sector to Martin de Jong. So this is going to be a real benchmark time from Charlie if he can hang it together through Sector 2, which he is coming through now, Hasse. This could be very exciting from the driver who's currently on provisional pole.
It could. Let's see if he makes the lap stick. So far, it is looking good for him.
A little bit loose through the chicane, but loose can be quick. Just making his way now through the final couple of corners. I don't think he's improved in the second sector. That doesn't appear to be a personal best. So he needs to hook it really nicely up through that final bend if he is to improve on his previous time. We're going to see him come through now. Look at that, using all of the circuit, but running just wide of the apex. Wide off of the corner as well, but it doesn't matter too much so long as you carry the momentum and the speed all the way down this long start-finish straight. He's seemingly carrying on with the laps. That might mean that he is going to improve. By how much, we will find out as he breaks the timing beam and does not go faster. So he must have backed out. Yeah, backed off a lot through Sector 3. So he's going to have a second stab at pole position. As Martin de Jong, we saw him on an outlap, and I think it probably went wrong in the early stages and decided to abandon it and come through for a second attempt. But there's not much left in this session. Only 7 more minutes past the halfway point. That will be maybe a mistake that Martin de Jong will rue come the end of the session, because he is 4/10 shy of Charlie Nilsson, who is now on his way out of the pits. Look at all those drivers on the left-hand side on outlaps, getting ready for what will probably be their second to last attempt at pole position.
And something we can expect from this final sector is that it's a very raceable part of the track, with the speed so slow and the track being as wide as it is as well. It leaves you plenty of space to sort of juggle around, and plenty of space for 2 cars to go through as well. That's going to be interesting. Yeah.
I think we're going to see Masaroni in a good position, because I've just seen that I think he's in behind Nicholas Caccato, his teammate. If we can have a look at him on circuit, we'll just be able to confirm that, because if that is true, he's going to get a massive helping of slipstream. Yep, here we go, in behind his teammate. I just saw the outlaps vanish on the left-hand side of the screen, but look at how loose he was, and I think that is an off-track, and that is a lap invalidated. So he just pushes a little bit too hard, maybe the dirty air. He gives the signal to Nicholas that the lap is not going to be on, so both of them back off into the pits. But just look at all of the carnage and chaos out on circuit, everyone falling off out of the way of each other, making sure they're not hampering one another on flying laps. Matthew Terry is on a flying lap. You can see there on the left-hand side, no outlap symbol next to his name. The blue text not showing, which tells us that he is on a quick lap, but looking at the sectors, not quick enough to be challenging for the top 5 positions by the looks of things. But we will see as he comes across the line and breaks the time. I mean, what time it will be for Matthew Terry. He improves just by 1 position up into P8. So still inside the top 10, not a bad showing, but we definitely know that Matthew Terry can give us a little bit more than that. But Martin de Jong now start his flying lap.
Yeah, they're not separated by a whole lot either. It's less than half a second between Martin de Jong in second and Matthew Terry in 8th place at the moment. Have a few flying laps coming through. Charlie Lund Nielsen comes into turn 1 here. Martin de Jong's gotten stopped. So I think he
keeps making mistakes early on in the lap. He's pushing just a touch too hard. You can see that he's in second place, but not comfortably. There's less than a tenth separating him from Remco Barlow, which is going to be a worry. He can't afford too many more mistakes like that in the opening stages of a qualifying run. Charlie Lund Nielsen about a tenth off of his previous best through the first sector, but going down through that left-hander, he's got a very nice run. The car just picks up beautifully, uses just about what you're allowed to in terms of the track limits through the left-hander and making his way all the way down. You need to pick your braking point brilliantly. Brake maybe a little bit earlier than you planned, just because it gets you nice and tight through the right-hander to open up the left and get you on the power a little bit earlier. You can see a lot tidier than the previous times we've seen him through there, Hasse. This could be a very nice lap for Charlie Lund Nielsen. Looking at the Sector 2 time that he's just put through, though. Again, not really. That's electrifying. So we'll, again, seem to think about what he might be able to do, but because of the amount of times drivers have had stabs at laps and then inevitably backed away, their personal bests might not be too excellent. So let's see, Charlie Lund Nielsen might be getting a small amount of toe, but he had a very nice run out of the final bend. Makes the timing being now, what will it be?
Purple Sector 3 as well, and it's a new improved...
I think it is. I think it's pretty much the exact same lap time that he did before.
Down to the
it's only marginal.
It's down to the thousandth of a second on the improvement.
I'll be able to find out
but he's
how much he improved by.
He's 0.4 of a second clear of Martin de Jong, though, Edward. So with a healthy advantage.
That last sector.
It
was that last sector where he really came alive. But if we can, just have a look at Charlie Nielsen. I'll be able to tell you by how much he improved. So I can look at his best lap in qualifying. His best lap in qualifying was a 36. Before that point was a 36.623. That last lap was a 36.622. So 1,000th quicker. But if he does secure pole position by 1,000th, we know where he got that time all through that final sector. So now he knows what he can do. So all about trying to string those sectors together. He might have just 1 or 2 more attempts at it. Martin de Jong, again, not really able to improve on his previous time. Remco Barlow, no personal best through here, but will he still be able to improve? His final sector was a little bit quicker. And Gaston Messeroni, that's a much better lap time. Getting help, obviously, from his teammate Nicholas Caccato by the looks of things. But nevertheless, that is a brilliant team effort. A brilliant lap by Gaston Messeroni to get himself up onto the front row. And now Martin de Jong might start to rue how hard he's been pushing through that first sector, because all of those missed attempts at pole position, they might be costing him.
And here comes Chris Pio. And will he be improving? That's a 138.2. And that is just a few hundredths of a second off of his best time. So no improvement for him at the moment. Gaston Messeroni digs into the 36s as well. M-Class leaders, Darren Fellows, as you said, he's in the pits. He's not going to be...
having a very good time though, isn't he, Darren Fellows, currently in that Ferrari. It seems to be very nice around this circuit to drive. I think, Hasse, you're aware as well as I am, that Ferrari is an absolute rocket down a straight line. It has a brilliant amount of top end, and that will really help him out coming in towards turn 1, and probably help him actually make a few moves in the race.
Yeah, but we do also see both Nick McLaughlin and Pete Plastow maybe suffering a little bit in qualifying here, at least. Nick McLaughlin seemingly getting held up, which I'm not quite sure what the strategy is. He might not be able to improve. That could be it.
That will be it. You can see on the time there, just half a minute to go. Pete Plastow is on an outlap, but can't afford to dilly and dally too long, because now we'll only have 20 seconds from this point on to reach the line. I don't think he's going to do it, so he's misjudging his outlap. When probably a little bit too slowly here.
Yeah,
Now he's only got 10 seconds. He's not going to make it. So he's too cautious there on the outlap, and that's going to cost him. He won't be able to try and improve on his 8th place, so we'll need to then start to look behind. But Matthew Terry and Darren Fellows aren't looking likely to come through and set lap times either. So 8th place will be where Pete Plasdow will stay. Charlie Nelson did get across the line in time, but look at the whole gaggle of cars in behind. There's Chris Pio in the mix, but then in behind, crucially, Gaston Messeroni and Nicholas Cucato.
Yeah, but they might find themselves being held up. Yeah, as you can see.
Flashing. Chris Pio is entitled to continue on his fast lap, although he runs wide off the circuit. So now you would imagine he will get well out of the way. And Gaston Messeroni, I mean, he got a lot of benefit in towards turn 1 off of the slipstream. That is pretty much all you need, because you do get held up a little bit in terms of dirty air through the remainder of the lap. But Charlie Nelson appears to have pulled away just visually on this run through, so it will have to be an amazing final sector for Gaston if he is able to pull off this move, this position. Let's have a watch. Charlie Nelson not improving through the 2nd sector. Actually, actually no, scratch that. The sector 2 time has just come through, and he is quicker. Matthew Cerrone was around about half a tenth quicker than Charlie Nelson in the 1st sector. Then in sector 2, Charlie Nelson was half a second quicker to reply back. So it all pretty much comes down to this final sector. Who's going to be quicker? And I think Gaston Messeroni saw him a little bit loose through there and not really hooking up that final corner either. All sorts of out of shape, and realizes he's not going to be improving, making his way towards the pit entry. So Charlie Nelson will have secured pole position.
Yes, indeed. It's the Swede at the front, and let's see just how long it takes before we get the grid order up on screen. We'll have the second ticking and the session ticking over. That was quick. Charlie Lund-Nielsen on pole ahead of Gaston Messeroni, then Martin de Jong and Remco Barlow on row 2. Nicolas Cucato joined by Patrick Gannon there on row 3, with Nick McLaughlin and Pete Plastow on row 4. Matthew Terry is joined by M-Class pole seated Darren Fellows. My apologies. He's in the Ferrari, and he's in 10th place overall. Matthew Forrest behind him with Alfredo Tricorici there in 12th. And that is, of course, the 6th row of cars. 13th is Chris Pio ahead of Ivo van der Linden, then Tony, and Matt Maddox ahead of Ari Sherwood and Stephen Orrell, who did not come out for qualifying. Let's see if he's here for the race. Indeed, could be a qualifying ban. I'm not quite sure about that. We do have the cars lining up. We have the short run to the line before we're going green here. It's going to be 45 minutes of racing. It's going to be that old 50% fuel cap. We do know the strategy pretty well by now, Edward. It's going to see more seeing is just how it's going to be applied here, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's just waiting for all the drivers to make their way up to the grid. Charlie Nelson from pole and Stephen Orrell in last. Just waiting for them to get to the grid. And then we can start the procession all the way up to the start-finish straight, where obviously the pace car will peel off and Charlie Nelson will be able to set the pace before we go green. Interestingly, though, Charlie Nelson very quick, as you can see in qualifying, and that's going to give him a lot of stead because he set those 2 laps pretty much identical times. He's got the consistency that he knows that could translate in towards his race pace. Gaston Messeroni needed a bit of help from his teammate to get that lap time, so that could help Charlie Nelson's confidence, knowing that that time was done in slipstream. Charlie's time was done in complete clear air.
So the field rolls along through the final sector, and it's going to be, for many of them, not all of them I know, but for many of them at least, their first experiences at racing these GT3s here at Fuji. When I've had that much chance to guzzle down the from the jar of experience, I was about to say. But on the right-hand side, it's Charlie Lund-Nielsen. On the left, it's Gaston Messeroni, and then they all follow in behind. It's a long pit straight, but the pit itself isn't all that long, and it comes relatively late. And as such, we'll have to feel well bunched up before we're going green here, and there's nothing they can really do about it. be seeing the pace car peel off to the right. Or at least it should. And there we go. A bit of a dangerous maneuver if you ask me. But we are about ready to go green. And now it's all up to Charlie Lund-Nielsen. He wants to make sure he doesn't overtake the safety car. And there we go. Green, green, green. And we're racing. And as you can see...
Excellent getaway there from Charlie, wasn't it? And in towards turn one, Martin de Jong is going to go for it. Go for second place up the inside of Gaston Messeroni. He'll have the advantage, but will he have to drive out of the corner? Yes, he does. So that's a nice move made early doors by Martin de Jong. And exactly what he needed to do after a slightly disappointing qualifying session, not to be on the front row. He's already made up for it. The first time of asking, something might have happened to Darren Fellows. He is way, way back. The pole sitter has dropped back 4 places with a bit of damage on the front end. He might have been part of a bit of a checkup in towards turn one. We'll just have a look at the replay when everything calms down. But Alfredo Triccarici finds himself leading the AM class in the top 10 overall as well. So very good start for the BMW driver. Matt Maddox, though, brilliant for him as well. Up 5 positions. BDM Racing going nicely indeed. As Charlie Nielsen can now see a big BMW in his rear view mirrors. He'll start to worry just a touch.
We'll see if the worries really seep in, or if you can translate that qualifying pace into race pace. A good start from Martin de Jong, though. Up into second place, really showing that his race pace seems to be very much there. See if they can keep it going. A little touch of the grass there, unsettling the car. You don't want to do too much of that. Find yourself in trouble quickly indeed. As we begin the second lap of racing here. The field all strung out. So we'll have a look at just what happened at the start there, and in particular,
it's a brilliant lap from Charlie.
But there's been a bit of squabbling there, and behind us, Remco Barlow. Oh, and
dear,
somebody goes.
Dear. That was Nick McLaughlin, I think, in a big snap, almost taking out his teammate, I think, for a second there. Patrick Gallen, you can see squabbling with Pete Plastow. Here's a look at the replay. Pete Plastow, you can see just in behind. Now, basically giving the position, then all of a sudden there's a bit of a confusion up ahead. Starts to sort them out, but Charlie Nielsen had a brilliant lap that time by. That was essentially a qualifying time. Don't forget his car is fully laden with fuel. That is brilliant stuff. Nicholas Kakato, that was him getting the move done. But I think it was the 42 of Remco Barlow, leaving plenty of space that actually confused the 62 of Nick McLaughlin, and Patrick Gunn was there to seize the position, seize the opportunity. Now he's up into 7th place, so not bad for the RPM Racing driver, but further up in front, Charlie Nielsen still with Martin de Jong for company. This was the opening lap with Darren Fellows. And there's 3 wide, and I think he just comes across the nose there of Matthew Forrest. I don't think there's anything Matthew does wrong. They're going 3 wide into turn 1. Darren Fellows, I just think, loses that little bit of awareness.
And we've just had this situation. Oh no!
And I think that was Van der Linden and
Ari Sherwood.
Darren Fellows.
Ari Sherwood came across them as well. And I think he came across the worst in the BMW.
Yeah,
Darren Fellows, I think he's going to come into the pits, I think.
He seems to be going all right, actually, for Darren Fellows. I can't see him all yet. There we go. Damage all along the car, and that's going to be really bad because he won't be able to make it till the end of the race with this pit stop. So it is one that's going to be done to fix damage, fix a meatball. Definitely not the start to the race that he was hoping for. Not one that he wanted for a championship either. He had such a good start to the season, obviously winning the first round of the championship in his class at, I believe, Interlagos, keeping himself out of trouble, but sadly he's not been able to do that in the rounds following. Been involved in quite a few unfortunate incidents, and that's just sometimes the way things go. But for Alfredo Triccarici in his championship, this is the best news possible. He's leading the way, but with Matt Maddox and right in behind him, he'll have to hope that doesn't become a problem. Ari Sherwood not necessarily having the greatest of qualifyings or starts the race either, and that's going to be a bit of a worry for the championship. But look at that damage on the front end there. That's going to be really hampering the top end.
Yeah.
And you'd want to come into the pits to fix that sooner rather than later. Basically, as soon as the pit window opens and you can make it to the end of the race on that tank of fuel, you do it. You get that car fixed up and you go.
Yeah, that'll be the best way to mitigate that issue. I'm pretty sure. Charlie Lund-Nielsen's really done what we were expecting him to do, and he's just stretched the advantage. It's just over a second. Martin de Jong still within slipstreaming distance, but it's just too far for it to materialize into anything. Charlie Lund-Nielsen seems to have that Audi hooked up so well, and really going at it. Here's Patrick Gannon close to the tail of Pete Plastow. Plastow's had a good start. He's been climbing and it's gained 2 positions. Kato's gained a single. Martin de Jong's gained a single as well. Matt Maddox up 5 places through all the chaos early in the race. He's sitting second in AM. A very good start for him. And just under a second behind Tricarici as well. So within striking distance, you'd say. The Coanda train, Maceroni up ahead, and then it's Kukato and Remco Barlow. Let's see how much they're going to be squabbling it out. And we've seen them do that before. They might like stretch out their strategy a bit here and have some of the drivers trying to save fuel while others playing the hare, basically to push on as hard as possible. We'll see when they make their strategic calls. You'd expect this track to be, I guess the back straight is going to be obviously very heavy on fuel usage, but the rest of the track, there's a lot of time when you're coasting here, whatever you're sort of trying to do, and it should be a place where if you're good at it, could save potentially quite a bit of fuel here. Matt Forrest is struggling quite a bit with his Audi. So I think he tried to pass on Matthew Maddox. Maddox got a bit of a shoddy exit. Forrest on the outside. And then he's not able to really make that connect. Goes out of it in the end.
Has actually rather to defend from Ivo van der Linden. So that was interesting. It's turn one. Matthew Forrest not getting the best run possible out of the final corner because of obviously the squabble he had with Matt Maddox. Sees him struggle to defend 12th place, but just about succeed. But yeah, like you say, interesting to see the train of Coanda racing cars. For a moment as well, I was worried that Martin de Jong was dropping back too far from Charlie Lund-Nielsen. That gap was over a second, 1.2 seconds, but now it's starting to come down. Now it's 9/10 of a second, and I think Martin de Jong is basically just trying to manage this race and maybe save a bit of fuel, and that could help him come the end of the race. It seems through here, though, BMW, its lack of willingness to turn in and bite does see him drop back a lot, because all of a sudden he has dropped back quite a few tenths. Like I said, it was about 9/10. Now it is 1.4 seconds. Just shows where these cars make their lap times. And through that final corner, it does look a lot nicer for Martin de Jong. And all throughout that first sector as well, it appears to be the car to be in this BMW. But for the rest of the lap, Charlie Lund-Nielsen can pull up such more of an advantage, and that's really where we see it shift over.
Yeah, it's about a tenth and a half on the last lap altogether in the favor of Charlie Lund-Nielsen. So overall, the advantage is going to be building. You can see the BMW just needs to go slower on the apex than the Audi is able to do so, and it's I think it's a frustrating situation to be in. Oh, as Martin de Jong almost takes too much of the grass coming into turn 3, but he'll be wanting to follow Charlie.
Gains a lot through here. A lot through here. That BMW does seem to succeed a bit better in those higher and medium speed corners, but then all the way through this next sector, he's going to drop back a lot again. Just look at Charlie Lund-Nielsen up ahead. Look at the time differential. It's 1.6 seconds. That'll probably come to something like 2 seconds so they get onto the start-finish straight.
Oh no, that's Darren
Fellows.
Yeah.
From bad to worse for the BDM racing driver. Not what he's hoping for, but he'll just have to keep going and just stick it out, unfortunately. Matthew Forrest and Matt Maddox continue to scrap away. This was just a little while earlier. Side by side into the braking zone, the inside line for Maddox. Matthew Forrest looking for a switchback, but just the car is unstable on the curbs, and that's what stops him getting on the power. Settle for the position for now. Martin de Jong, what did I say it was going to be when he comes out the final corner, Hasse? Around about 2 seconds. What's the gap between Charlie Nielsen and Mark de Jong? 2 seconds.
2 seconds indeed. So a great position to be in. Relatively comfortable for Charlie Nielsen. Look at here, Tricorici though has been caught up to big time by Matt Maddox. And Matthew Forrest is there, but he knows this is the lead for the AM class. Maddox with a great run here, really utilizing the slipstream, putting on the squeeze. How's Matt Forrest gonna go 3 wide in here? Oh,
look for the switchback, Matt. If he gets it done, he'll have a nice run. But again, he just struggles to find the position out of track. But all the way around the outside, excellent move through turn 1. Matt Maddox, brilliantly done. And they're gonna try and fight 2 wide into the second corner. That's something you don't want to do. And all the way around the outside. Now it's going to be tricky for Matthew Forrest. He knows he's going to be quicker than Alfredo Tricorici. But it's about finding your way through, and it's a lot harder than it looks around here at Fuji. But Alfredo Tricorici goes deep into the corner, and that's going to open the gap wide. As what's gone on there? That's Nick McLaughlin having a moment through the left-hander. This is Matthew Terry. Sees the car sliding up ahead of him, and there isn't really anything he can do. He slows down to try and avoid the incident, but the car is just stopped right in front of him. But just sees the car spinning, doesn't know where it's going to end up. He slows down to avoid it, but the car stops directly ahead of him, tries the best to avoid it, and gives Nick McLaughlin a little bit of a bump for good measure. So tricky though, going down through the corner, the car does get very light on you as you try and turn it in. You don't get that compression until it's too late, and by the time it's already started to go, if you get that compression, it'll send you around. As both cars getting onto the anti-cuts, the sausage curves, just one on the entry in Matt Maddox and one on the exit in Matthew Forrest's case. These two will probably continue squabbling for the rest of the race, but further up ahead, the Coanda train continues on the rolling. Maceroni trying to build a gap and succeeding in doing so against Nicholas Cucato, who's got Remco Barlow for company, and then in behind it is Pete Plastow and Patrick Gallen, who's, I think, not quite gelling with this Fuji circuit as Patrick. He's still up inside that top 10 in 7th place, but compared to what we've been seeing him at other circuits, at Detroit Belle Isle and at the Nürburgring, it's not quite in that same level of pace that I think we're accustomed to.
No, that's true. That is true. It's just a little bit off. Not a lot, but it doesn't take a lot to sort of fall off the top pace here as Tricorici trying to defend himself from Ivo van der Linden.
It's interesting to know what's going on with Tricorici, because he seems to be struggling a lot more than he was doing at the early phase of the race. I'm not sure if there's damage or if it's maybe something with the setup that he's worked the tyres too much already in the first 12 minutes and he's seemingly struggling just in every single phase, both on turning and especially on corner exit. The car doesn't appear to be too settled underneath him, and that is where he's really losing a lot of the time to those around him. He's already lost near enough 1.5 seconds to Matt Maddox, who's leading this race. All the while, Matt Maddox is losing time himself, trying to keep Matthew Forrest in behind. Chris Pio there, 3rd place in AM, waiting in the wings should anything occur, and he's been lapping nice and sensibly. As I say, that makes a little bit of a mistake through the final corner, running a little bit too wide, has to get out of the throttle and can't get on the power as early as he likes. But here we go, battle for 9th place. Matt Maddox, Matthew Forrest going up the inside. Matt Maddox doesn't need to fight this. It's not for class position, but of course I think drivers do score points based on overall position, which incentivizes a little bit of battling. Matt Maddox basically gives the position back, looks for a switch back, but again, the car struggles on that inside, putting the power down, and excellent move there by Matthew Forrest to get himself up into 9th place. Both of them inside the top 10. Now it might be a case of Matt Maddox deciding to work together with Matthew Forrest this time by just to save a little bit of fuel, maybe gain some time as well in the slipstream to keep his AM class rival at bay in Alfredo Tricorici.
But we spoke to one of the drivers, and I must admit I actually don't remember particularly who said it, but that there's a bit of interclass rivalry going on, and especially because it also it goes on to be, well, at least some of the deciders in terms of kind of deciding who stays in pro, who gets to race in AM, any of the AM drivers to be promoted into pro, and so on. And that's an interesting perspective to have along as well, and one that I hadn't really thought about myself. before, of course, being told that it's actually a thing. At Maddox, you can see again, it's the case of the Audi just being so strong in the final sector. It's not necessarily easier to overtake if you're behind someone, but when it's in front, you can see it just pull out such an advantage. Here's still Cucato, Barlow, and then a second behind these two, it's Pete Plastow and Patrick Gannon, who's sort of catching up to the Ferrari of Pete Plastow here. He's definitely been working on that gap. Plastow seems a bit under pressure there. One thing that's really easy to do with the long corners especially is to overwork the tires, overdrive the car, and in no time you'll be just taking the edge out of them. Not as much through wear as through temperature itself that builds up and doesn't really get the chance to properly cool down. And if that happens, whoever's following, if you have that little bit of extra bite, you're gonna be enjoying it so much more. And it really seems to be going Patrick Gannon's way. But Pete Plastow isn't really dropping off from the cars ahead of him as well. So Gannon could be finding his groove here, and he could be coming back on both Remco Barlow and Nicolas Cucato here.
Yeah, I think interestingly, it is that front left tyre that takes the most punishment, obviously, through this long left-hander that sets you up for the run onto the start-finish straight. But then, of course, heavy left-hander, the heavy sort of right-hander rather, in the braking zone in towards turn one, where you do lean on it quite a lot. All the drivers there. It's early pit stop there for Remco Barlow. So deciding to pull the trigger early, didn't want to be involved in that sort of train, and thought it's going to break the chain and see if that might help out his teammates. Could potentially work out for him, of course. We will watch through with interest. That corner is one where you do lean in the front because you're braking hard. The front end is pitched down, the weight's all at the front, and then as you turn in, that can scrub the front left. Through here, it's mainly the front right because you chuck a lot of speed into the corner, and you see the car leans on that right hand side. Then all throughout here, this left hand side, both the front and rear, just gets absolutely punished. It is a nightmare for the tyres, and I think we are seeing that an area where the drivers are going to start to struggle, is the tyre life. And we're not going to see anyone take tyres in this race, but it will be a case of who can look after them best over the course of this race will really start to benefit in those final 15 minutes when everyone else is losing that performance.
Well, it was the chain that was keeping the Coanda racing cars together, and we also did have what is his name? Remco Barlow, sorry, riding in the shadows for a bit of a pun. Anyways, an early stop for him. Let's see how it works out. I think he's managed to do it to such a degree that he is 10 seconds to the car ahead. Well clear in that regard. So interesting to see if it's going to work out for him or not. He will be running heavier, you would suppose at least, than many of the other cars. And that's rarely an advantage really. But at the same time, he also could be feeling that he was sort of getting held up by the drivers up ahead, and he had to do something about it. Martin de Jong just put in his personal best lap, Edward, and it's a 10th.
Still not good enough to beat Charlie Lund-Nielsen.
I was just about to say it's still a 10th slower on that last lap than Charlie Lund-Nielsen, indeed. And meanwhile, it's got to be demoralising as you're a driver, isn't it? Hasse, to be trying as hard as you can, put your personal best, and you're still not getting on the car ahead. No, that's a tough one to swallow. Patrick Gannon, though, I've seen him close that gap on Pete Plastow, and it just seems like it's a little bit hard for the BMW to gain that final decisive edge on the Ferrari. Pete Plastow has been running better and better throughout the race as well. They're still latched on fairly well to the tails of the two Argentines, the pairing of Maceroni and Cucato in the third and fourth respectively at the moment, and then of course Charlie Lund-Nielsen with a healthy advantage of 3.5 seconds down to Martin de Jong. I wonder if, I think that either I saw something wrong before or that advantage was a bit bigger. Not quite sure. We'll see as they both come across the line here in a short moment's time. Just what the lap times are going to be.
Charlie's last lap with a 37.67. This comes over the line. What'll be? It's a 37.67 pretty much again. So you can just see the consistency coming through from Charlie Nilsson is definitely there. Martin de Jong isn't too far off consistent himself either, just about half a tenth off his previous lap time, which was also his best lap time of the race thus far. But again, it's just Charlie extending his advantage quicker and quicker than Martin de Jong every single lap. That's what he needs to build up that sort of buffer as they come into the pits. Because even if Martin de Jong is saving fuel, those seconds that will gain in the pit stop won't be enough to see him out ahead of the Swede who's currently leading, Patrick Gallen. This could be a chance for a really nice move. He's got a good exit out of the corner, but it seems that the grunt from that Ferrari is enough just to keep it ahead. But Pete Blasdale will start to feel a lot of pressure and maybe be prone to making a mistake. As here we go, Patrick Gallen diving up the inside, gets it stopped in time for the apex, but then needs to leave room on the inside. Well held there by Pete Blasdale, just hanging on to 5th place. But Patrick Gallen gave it a good go. Credit to him. Just wasn't quite able to make it stick.
And we've seen the BMW struggle here in the final sector. That goes for Patrick Gannon as well, because ideally he'd want to just try and set that move up into turn 1, but it seems a lot harder set. Well, it's easier said than done. I was about to say it the other way around, and that would make much sense. Good exit indeed for Gannon, and could be on this time around. It's about 0.3 of a second, but he's quickly gaining. We know the BMW straight line speed is impressive as well. Of course, the Ferrari quick and slick, but you can see just how quickly he's gaining here. He's practically alongside, and he is alongside with overspeed into the braking zone, I think. Oh, he hasn't got it stopped in time, has he? But he'll get a better run here on the exit.
No, it just struggles a little bit on the curve on the outside, which means he's able to get on the Parazellis he likes, but he's going to look up the inside in towards turn number 3, chucking it through. He gets the move made. Nicely done there by Patrick Gannon. There's a little bit of tyre smoke up ahead, but I can't see anyone off.
No, that's
which is interesting enough. I think something might have happened to Martin de Jong because he's lost a lot of time there to Charlie Lund-Nielsen. He set his fastest lap of the race last time by, and then all of a sudden mistakes crept through, and oh dear, as I said before, Martin de Jong was quick through here, but seemed to struggle and made a few mistakes. This isn't, I don't think, the right replay. I'll have a look through there. It was through turn 3, just chucking it in, and we saw, didn't we, a little while ago when we were following him earlier. A little bit of a struggle. I think he might have touched the grass as he turned in. And now Gaston Maceroni can see second place is well up for the taking.
Yeah, it's all come together here as well, because Kukato used that to close right in on Maceroni as well. And Martin de Jong will be feeling the pressure. As the pit stop round draws closer, we'll be keeping our attention to someone who's flown under the radar ever so slightly there, and Remco Barlow, just to see where he comes out. At the moment, he's 49 seconds down, with an overall pit lane time of 45 seconds.
I think
but that's of course on Charlie.
You about 50 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. So he could actually be on. Oh, he's sending it though. He's absolutely smashing it at the moment, trying to massively undercut the entire field. It's going to be very interesting to see if he can actually get something out of this different strategy. Pete Plastow's in now.
Oh dear, yeah, that's early pit stop. He got ahead of, it was actually him battling with Maddox, was it? He was still squabbling away, and now is back up and running. You'll see where that slots him. He's going to be coming out probably behind Remco Barlow, which he does. Remco, I think, could be on for a sneaky little podium here, pitting early, and I think we saw that at the first round, didn't we, Hasse? It was what got Remco Barlow the result he did, getting that nice podium go his way, just because of an early pit stop and keeping himself out of all the dramas that are unfolding. I mean, dramas certainly have unfolded with Martin de Jong making that mistake and causing Gaston Maceroni to have to slow down, as did Nicholas Cocato. Game definitely on, but will it actually manage to be brought through by Gaston Maceroni? Sooner or later as well, these drivers will be making their pit stops, and I don't know what Martin de Jong's going to do here. If he's going to opt to go in early and not give these drivers any more slipstream, or if he's going to just try and stick it out and hopefully break away. Very tricky decision to make, I think.
It's a good question, and one that he'll have to sort of make up quickly. He could also be realizing that it might be all down to track position here. If he gets down into his groove, he's also sort of shown that he's quicker than the two. So he might just be wanting to make sure that he gets the best out of his car as he can and while it's light. And we'll see just how it goes. Trickery into the pitch, yes, a good point. Got a bit of damage on the car, I think, as well. If it is,
it's okay from this angle. Might be on the right front.
Yeah, I don't think I saw anything pop out with the fast repair, so probably not. As he's in for his stop. First of the top runners in AM to take a stop. Darren Fellows will need to take another pit stop. That's gonna throw him...
Relatively long pit stop, actually. He was stationary for 16 seconds. A lot longer than everyone else who's pitted, who's done around about 12 to 11 second pit stop. So that's intriguing from Tricarici. Total pit lane time is 50 seconds. 16 of those spent stationary. Where does that put him? He's out in behind Darren Fellows by... What sort of margin is that? Is that about 11 seconds I'm seeing? That's quite a healthy advantage there for Darren Fellows, who obviously came into the pits as AM-class leader.
But he'll need to stop again. I think he'll need to stop again, Darren Fellows, as he was in on lap 2.
Oh, yeah, true.
So that'll drop him right to the bottom of the order, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well noticed there. I got a little bit carried away with myself, so we are waiting for Matt Maddox to come into pits. As I say that, look who's just come into the pit lane, Matt Maddox, and this is the battle for the AM-class lead. Alfredo Tricarici and Matt Maddox swapping places. Matt Maddox was leading and has been leading for a majority of this race in his AM-class. We're going to watch Alfredo Tricarici. He's going to come up towards the final corner. I think Matt Maddox will soon be making his way through the pit exit. Just as Matt Maddox makes his way out of the final corner.
Long stop for Maddox. 18 seconds, 19, 20 seconds. Terrible stop.
Incredibly long stop for Matt Maddox.
You have to wonder just what the case is, because he's been stationary.
Speeding in the pits.
Oh my word.
It must be. It must be him getting caught speeding in the pit lane, and that is going to see him with a hefty penalty. You get held for so long. It's around about 40 seconds, I believe. iRacing, it slaps you very hard. And that's going to be a big punishment for Matt Maddox.
In a race like this,
from to swallow.
In a race like this, Edward, 13 minutes of racing remaining doesn't really offer up a lot of opportunity for comebacks in that regard. Chris Pio is basically now the main contender to Alfredo Tricarici. We spoke about 50 seconds altogether, and it's, as far as I can see, it's about 43 seconds now for Chris Pio. He could be in for a shorter stop. We'll just have to see how it goes. It was 50 seconds in the pit lane altogether. For Alfredo Tricarici, you tend to lose a little bit more here, as Chris Pio is able to go on as well. And Matt Maddox, not only has he had that issue, Edward, he went straight out the pits and stopped. And then, of course, our leading...
he had to let McLaughlin through.
Yeah, I think
Ari
so too.
Sherwood coming into the pits. Driver who is in contention, of course, for the AM-class this season. After excellent results this season, most notably his class victory at Detroit Belle Isle. Did he catch a class victory in Nürburgring or Tricarici? I can't quite remember. I think it was Ari Sherwood that won there as well. My memory is not as good as it is. That's what happens when we have a couple of weeks off.
I think you're right. I actually think you're right. Tricarici gone past there on Ari Sherwood. Did Sherwood have a bit of a moment early in the race? He's a fair bit of way down on Tricarici.
Still got damage and hasn't been able to serve it with a fast repair. Maybe he doesn't realise the extent of the damage, because obviously inside the car you don't notice the huge shoved in front end that he's got. He's losing a lot of time for it, but Maybe because he had it so early in the race, he feels like it's normal. Meanwhile, class leader
Here we go.
into the pits
Here we
with
go.
Gaston Messeroni in behind and Matthew Terry as well. So here we go. We're going to watch race and pro class leader Charlie Lenilson in the pit lane. That's given Martin de Jong a bit of breathing room up ahead, and obviously he already had clear air, but even clearer sight that he's now the race leader. Will be for maybe one lap, maybe two, depending on how much he's been able to save. Charlie Lenilson with relatively quick pit stop there, 14 seconds.
But both
quicker than Gaston Messeroni, who might have a penalty as well for speeding in the pit lane. It is very tricky.
Here. Look
Gaston Messeroni's got a penalty.
Oh my word, Messeroni's got a penalty as well. So he's not
Could
the
be
only...
unsafe pit entry as well. That's something that's very difficult to get right. You can just cut through the white lines and it will give you a penalty for that, as well as speeding in the pit lane.
But it is a penalty. That's true. Definite penalty. That's such a tough one again to get. Martin de Jong still holding out ahead of the field there with Cucato second, then Patrick Gannon, Chris Pio, and he's the last one that has yet to pit. I think they'll be coming in around here. Yeah, indeed.
Here we go.
Do see it's a tricky entrance. Oh, very easy to get it
why
wrong.
So many drivers have been getting penalties, because it is so easily done to just run it a little bit too hot, lose control of the car. All drivers try to save, if they can, seconds, tenths, if it is that much in towards the pit entry. But I mean, we can see Martin de Jong is not even stopped in his box, and already Charlie Lenilson is on the start-finish straight. So it is likely to be Charlie who will retake the lead of the race.
He's going to be well clear, I think.
Comes into the bits well clear indeed. Remco Barlow and Martin de Jong, I think this is the battle to look for. Martin de Jong is now making his way on pit exit, as is Nicholas Cucato. I said it might be close for Remco if he's going to be able to get out ahead, but he's not actually close enough at all, is he? He's going to be there in the slipstream, but not enough in towards turn one to properly score. So Martin de Jong holds on to second place ahead of Nicholas Cucato. Remco Barlow, the strategy didn't quite play off as much as he was hoping for, but he can still see Martin de Jong, Nicholas Cucato, drivers second and third, podium places, definitely up for grabs for Remco Barlow.
Look at this here, Chris Pio. Alfredo Tricchericci's going to get it back, but only just. It's going to be on for the win in the M class as well, I think. If Chris Pio can find the pace in the car, that's what it all really depends on. In a situation like this, Martin de Jong under pressure from Nicolas Cucato. And then Remco Barlow.
We have seen all race long, though, Martin de Jong is a little bit quicker than these co-anda racing cars, but it's all about consistency. We've already seen one mistake from Martin de Jong. We know he is a little bit prone to those little errors here and there. And now it's going to be a real test for him to try and withstand this pressure, because you can imagine that's going to be coming thick and fast from Nicholas Cucato for the next 12 minutes of this race.
Yeah, they are the closest two on track at the moment, so there's every reason to believe it could get very interesting indeed here. Now look at this, Alfredo Tricchericci catching up to Chris Pio as well, as Pio's on the chase for, it's Gaston Messeroni catching up to Pio, who's chasing Tricchericci. Not quite sure I got that right. I might have. Been a long day. Nicholas Cucato. Is he gonna get this? It's got just about 11 minutes to get it figured out, really, and on level terms. Of course, not on equal setups you would expect them to be on. Well, it could, of course, be, but I don't think so. I'd be very surprised, actually. Cucato a little bit wide there, but figuring out just about where the limits are. Meanwhile, a few battles as well further down. Gaston Messeroni needs to find his way through on Chris Pio. Pio's last lap was his outlap from the pit, so that's not really something we can put too much into.
Oh, for a second there, I was worried Chris Pio was going to go straight into the back of Gaston Messeroni. I think Gaston was a little bit worried as well, because you can see how wide he went through the exit of the corner.
Yeah. It has cost Chris
Pio
a lot.
It has cost him a lot of time, and I think Chris was hoping to let Gaston Messeroni through without losing too much time to then get into the slipstream and maybe be brought into the fight with Alfredo Tricarici, but that gap still remains about 5 seconds between Chris and Alfredo, so plenty of time for him to bring it up down, but only, actually not a lot of time to be fair, only 10 more minutes to go in this race, so Chris needs to get a bit of a move on if he wants to secure the M-Class victory or challenge for it at the very least. Marc de Jong, only half a second the advantage to third place Nicholas Cucato, but Remco Barlow, he's not been able to make any inroads into this battle, he's still 2 seconds back.
Yeah, he's pretty much where he got left as he came out the pits. It's been a very equal measure to the two drivers up ahead. Martin de Jong does seem to have the slight advantage on pace. It might also just be maybe ever so slightly more prone to making a mistake or two while under pressure. We've seen that before. He tends to sort of be his own worst enemy in that regard. Very, very quick. And on his day here, the quickest maybe even, but I also have to hand it to Charlie Lund Nielsen. He's done a superb job yet again here, and he's distanced the rest of the field with, well, relatively considerably. Now I'd imagine he's basically just taking it easy and not taking any risks here at the end because he doesn't need to.
No, exactly. It's not something that's worth, you know, throwing yourself into and risking a big bit of contact, but again, now that final corner, Marc de Jong does appear to struggle, and Nicholas Cucato just reels him in that little bit more, and that could be a case of the tyres maybe starting to go away from Martin. It's not an easy circuit, of course, on the tyres. You can see, thank you very much, Hasse, the track temperature increasing as it has done all race long now to 26 degrees. Making it all more harder on the drivers to keep the cars under control and the tyres to keep the grip up through these long sweeping corners. That's just going to punish them even further. But through there, that first sector is really good for Martin de Jong. He seems to always pull out the advantage, and then through this final sector, it's probably down to how the cars are set up, he struggles that bit more.
But it's interesting to see how much of a difference it makes, also because when you've had a track that's been on many seasonal calendars for season after season, some of these staple holes in iRacing, there'll be a sort of a canon as to what kind of setup works for each car. Here it seems that hasn't quite been established yet, and we see cars that seems to be quite different in terms of how they sort of react to the turns and the corners and the different sectors and where they gain the time, as we've seen quite strongly put out, strongly painted, in beautiful color and nuance.
Really nice lap as well for Martin de Jong, just coming through now. Personal best through the first sector, and well, personal best of the race so far. So a really good lap, and a lap that Martin de Jong sorely needed to try and give himself some breathing room away from Nicholas Cucato as we do approach the final moments of this race. Only around about 6.5 minutes to go. Charlie Nelson is going to be relishing those 6.5 minutes in the lead of the race with a comfortable advantage, nearly 8 seconds the gap between first to second, which, to be fair, over the course of 45 minutes worth of racing isn't a whole lot, but of course it's a nice sizable gap for Charlie. When he looks in his rearview mirrors, he will see just clear track behind him and know that he's on track for a nice, well-earned victory as long as he keeps it on the road. But tell you what, race victories to Charlie Nelson are like buses. You wait for one, and then suddenly two are going to come all at once after getting his first race victory at the Nürburgring, the GP circuit. Seems to be all falling into place from now here at Fuji as well.
Yeah, well, just looking at the standings, it's going to open it up quite a bit with both Kukato and especially Charlie Lund-Nielsen making inroads on the drivers ahead of them. I think Charlie Lund-Nielsen could actually propel himself up into second place in the overall standings, not only closing the gap on Remco Barlow, but basically gapping everyone in between with this result. As it stands for the moment, of course, it's going to be much to his aid if Martin de Jong can just hold on to second place for about 5 more minutes, plus whatever that final lap is going to take.
Ricciardo's closed a lot on that last lap.
Oh, and he closes a lot there as well. And he's a sneaky old fuck. He's a sneaky
fox.
That's exactly what I was looking for. I'm a bit dry in my mouth. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a bit dry in the mouth and sort of stumbled upon the word as I was trying to get it out. He is indeed a sneaky old fox, as I was trying to say. And he...
Doesn't sound much better, to be fair. I see what you mean.
But he could be like, and my point stands. Yeah. He could be one of the drivers to sort of hold off for a few laps, save his tires, and then really bring it on a charge with the confidence that's required for a move like that. Takes a lot of curb there, really trying to ace his way through that final sector. He knows here, Edward, if he can set it up through that final sector, he's had the run on pretty much every time they've come down that start-finish straight. If he's close enough, he'll be in a good position coming into turn 1.
Yeah, it's all about the run out of the final corner. Now he's half a second back, but what will it be as he gets onto the power through the final corner? You can see taking a wider line. Helps him get on the power a little bit early, but it's as soon as he gets on that power, the way the circuit it sort of has a little bit of a bump on the inside there, it almost stops him. And he finds himself for again half a second back from Martin de Jong. 3.5 minutes to go of this race. Charlie Lund-Nielsen's come across the line. We'll probably have maybe 2, maybe 3 more laps to go. It'll be tight when we get up to the line, but I think it will be after this next lap 2 more. We won't get the white flag when Charlie Lund-Nielsen comes up to the line here, I don't think. But it's been a brilliant performance, hasn't it, from the Swede? The momentum and the wind is certainly beneath his wings and carrying him forwards. Brilliant performances, a brilliant strategy, you have to say, that he needed to get that race victory at the Nürburgring. But here, it's just been about raw pace. He hasn't needed to try and outthink anyone. He's just had to outdrive them, and that's certainly worked for him here tonight.
Yeah, it has, and he's just been that tad of a level above everybody else, and he seems to have really connected with the Audi as well, and I know it's something that's not easy to do. Of course, it's not as bad as it's always been after one of the most recent tire model update, especially, has really done a world of good for the GT cars and iRacing. And especially for the mid-engine cars that seems to be so difficult to drive on the old model. They were like, fine, and then they really weren't. It's a lot more progressive now, and it seems to be working perfectly for Charlie Lund-Nielsen with just under 2 minutes left. He's gonna have the white flag at the end of this lap, I think, Edward, but just a few seconds left to the good. He's gonna get the white flag regardless.
Yep.
So 2 more laps, that is, or a single lap to follow the one he's on now, if you will, just to clear out any potential misunderstandings.
Nicholas Ricciardo is on a charge here. Purple first sector. He is not hanging about here, Hasse. He can see Martin de Jong for a moment has been getting away from him, and now he's starting to reel him back in. But for second place, we think it might be over. I think Nicholas Ricciardo has got a few things to say about that, because he is starting to close down onto Martin de Jong.
0.8 again there.
That's brilliant.
0.8 of a second. He really needs to get a shift on it. If de Jong's into the rhythm and settled in it, then I think Kukato might struggle.
He got a lot of time on Martin de Jong, and I think de Jong is starting to struggle now. The gap is half a second here, Hasse, as Matthew Terry was looking for a second to make the move on Pete Plasnow, but wasn't quite able to pull it off. And now, through the final corner, we have to look for Martin de Jong and Nicolas Cucato. Martin de Jong goes a little bit tighter through to the corner, but it seems to work in his favour. And now as they exit the corner, 7/10 the advantage. He's going to be safe into turn 1 as we see the white flag being waved for Charlie Nilsson. Martin de Jong knows he only has one more lap to defend, and with the car so far behind, he won't need to worry in towards turn 1. Where else can you overtake through here? Probably in towards the chicane before the final sector, but Cucato has not been close enough through there all race long, so yet again it seems Martin de Jong can hang on for one more lap.
A massive gain through turn 1 there on the brakes for Nicolas Cucato. Clawed back a few tenths. But it seems that through this sector, lap after lap, through this turn indeed, and through all the quicker turns.
For Cucato.
But de Jong quicker even though.
That left-hander really is strong for Martin. He gains a lot of time there. That was pretty much 2 tenths just through one corner alone. He gets the car set up beautifully on a run-in, nice and stable, and I think we will see him hold on to second place. So then we'll look for Matthew Terry and Pete Plasnow yet again. Nose to tail coming through this left-hander and all the way down now towards the hairpin, the sort of hairpin, almost chicane area. You have to brake so hard to get it stopped. Then Matthew Terry will look to the inside, darts up the inside, hard onto the brakes, but not enough to properly get the move, and he almost tags the rear quarter of Pete Plasnow, but no moves being made. So we will then come to the race leader here, and he comes up to the line. The flag will greet him, 2 on the bounce for Charlie Nilsson, who wins the 5th round of the championship here at Fuji. Well earned, just outdrove everyone. Martin de Jong had one little hiccup midway through the race, but managed to overcome it. And his good turn of pace saw him come back through in towards second place. Nicolas Cucato put up a fight at the end, but sadly has to settle for 3rd. Still a nice podium for him and his championship hopes.
Oh, and what is this on the line? Look at it!
Plasnow ahead of Terry just though.
What? It's because the timing line is a bit earlier than I expected,
It's
maybe.
A little bit earlier, yes.
Yeah,
it was just 0.3 of a second difference between Plasnow and Matthew Terry.
Close indeed. Trickerici's gonna come home for the AM class win. A great one for him as well, and a great way to extend the lead in the AM standings, ahead of Chris P.O. by 5 seconds. And Nick McLaughlin and Ari Sherwood's gonna take 3rd in the AM class. We'll be back in a week.
I'll tell you what is brilliant
for
I was going to say what's brilliant for, well, everyone in the championship apart from Gaston Maceroni is Gaston Maceroni finishing all the way down in 15th. He was a real contender for the championship, and all of a sudden after that result, that might be a death blow for his hopes, you know.
It's gonna be a hard one after that one, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I'm pretty sure indeed.
He was the winner of the first race of the season, wasn't he, Hasse, if memory serves right, winning at Interlagos, but all of a sudden it's just not worked for him. But here we go, Hasse, you can talk us through the race results.
Yeah, and pro, it's Charlie Lund Nielsen with the overall win as well, ahead of Martin de Jong and then Nicolas Cucato. Remco Barlow leading the championship into this race. I think, without having done too much maths, that he will still lead, but with a diminished advantage indeed. Patrick Gannon 5th, ahead of Pete Plasnow, Matthew Terry, Matthew Forrest, Ivo van der Linden, Nick McLaughlin, and Gaston Maceroni. An unlucky soul indeed today. In AM, we've got Alfredo Trickerici taking the win, as I said, by 5 seconds ahead of Chris Pio, then Ari Sherwood, Darren Fellows, Matt Maddox, Tony van der Linden, and Stephen Orrell. But a tough old time today as well. Before we go to the interviews, we're going to go to Bathurst next time around. That's going to be an interesting one. And then we got Solder, Montreal, Daytona, and Spa over the months of November and December. So we've got 5 interesting tracks, 5 very different tracks as well, and sort of 5 places that require wildly different sort of technical approaches to each and one another. That's going to be interesting. Let's see if we get the first drivers in for an interview. And indeed we do. It is the race winner, tonight's winner, and 2 on the trot here for Charlie Lund-Nielsen. Welcome, Charlie. Thanks for joining us, and just get the pictures in to follow along. Great win. Lights to flag, more or less. No real challenge along the way there. And just like Mika Häkkinen was once asked, you sort of almost made it look easy there.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks. Martin was fairly close to the first couple of laps, but yeah, then he fell back. I could just cruise to victory.
And we'd had a lot of talk about the turbo engines being maybe a bit stronger than the naturally aspirated ones, and you've sort of put that talk all to shame here with a good solid kicking to everybody else.
Yeah, definitely. The Audi felt great, and but on the straights the BMWs were a rocket ship. If Martin would have been closer at the last corner, he would have passed easily. It was like a rocket ship, his BMW.
Yeah, and Charlie, I'm just going to ask about the momentum now with you for your championship challenge. Sorry to go across you guys, I'm sure you're going to ask the same thing. But after coming off of the bounce of your race victory at the Nürburgring and then here at Fuji, 2 on the trot, do you think you can make it 3? Do you think maybe the championship is yours for the taking?
Well, I don't know about the championship, but I think I'll have a solid chance at Bathurst. I've been pretty good there in the previous times I've been there.
Excellent stuff. Well, that was the only question I want to ask, so I'll hand back over to Hasse.
Well, nothing more to add here, except that it's been great to see. Congratulations on a great win, and before we let you go and celebrate, is there anyone you'd like to give a thanks or a shout out to?
Yeah, thank you guys. Shout outs to Hasse and my father again. Next win, I'll dedicate to someone else.
We'll hope to see you on the top step there again, Charlie, to see just who will be the lucky receiver next time out there. Thanks for taking the time, and again, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you guys. Amazing work as always.
Thank you. So that was.
There we have Charlie Lund-Nielsen.
Yes.
Great effort from him. And I've just seen you pulled in our next interviewee. So let's have a chat to the driver who finished second. And Martin, that was a bit of a tricky race out there for you. We saw your little moment in towards turn 3. Thought that might be costly for you. But you still managed to hang on to second place. Not too bad, all things considered for you.
As usual, I made it very hard again for myself. Completely unnecessary. I mean, just running a little bit too wide on corner entry. I was holding on onto dear life, and when I got control back, it was really like, please let me keep in front of Gaston, which I managed to do so. And then, with the toasted tires, trying to get them cooled down a little bit again, and at the same time not losing a position. So that was interesting, yeah.
How do you go about trying to get the tyres back under control when they get too hot and you start to feel that performance start to wane? Because obviously you need to keep pushing to keep the car behind, but how do you balance it all?
Even being more, how do you say it? More careful on going on throttle, and also just a little bit earlier on the brakes, so you don't have to brake too hard. And trying to be a little bit more fluently on the steering inputs as well. So it's very hard when you have someone that close behind you. But after 1.5 laps or so, the car was back again. So I was really lucky with that.
Well, we come to Bathurst in about a week's time. Is that one you're looking forward to? I think that's the final endurance round of the championship.
I am absolutely not looking forward to that. I have a love-hate relationship with Bathurst. I can go quite strong there. but also in a split second completely end the race. So it will be an interesting one. For here for today, really congratulations to Chris. What is it, Chris again? I think Nielsen with the win. I mean, if I didn't make that mistake, I think I could have somewhat hold on a fair distance. And I really enjoyed the race in the end with Nicholas. Also making it very hard again for myself, making the jump in the final sector. I don't know if you guys saw that as well.
Don't think we did. We saw a little bit of close fight between you all race long, but good to know you like making it hard for yourself, but fingers crossed it's a bit easier for you next time out. But before we let you get off and have a nice well-earned rest, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out here on the broadcast?
Yeah, great thanks again to you guys, doing a splendid job as always. Always enjoying watching the races back. And congratulations to the rest of the podium and the AM winner, which I think is Alfredo Chikorici today. And towards the whole organization for this great league.
Excellent stuff, Martin. Thank you very much, and we will look forward to seeing you and all of the drivers out in action next week. And Hasse, it's Bathurst, a brilliant race, and we like to see drivers battle the mountain. I wonder who's going to be coming out on top there, because we obviously heard earlier on Charlie Nielsen with Fighting Talk saying that he was quite confident with his abilities through there, but of course plenty other drivers are in with the shout.
Yeah, indeed, and a track that's so different from anything else out there as well, both in terms of what it demands of the car, but especially of the driver. A track where you find some true specialists out there, and a track where I think that we might see a bit of an upset to it all. If nothing else, then just huge drama it tends to follow on the mountain. So I would be quite keen on tuning in a week's time here next Sunday to make sure you watch that with us, because it's going to be great, I'm quite sure. Thank you very much for joining in with us here tonight, here on the virtual racing compound with Ed May and myself, Hasse Rømer. Of course, thank you to Advanced SIMRACING for helping it out and making it possible in the first place, and the organizers, of course, without whom we wouldn't have any of this great evening entertainment that befalls on Sundays. From us here in the booth, it's been a pleasure having you on tonight, and all the best. Until next time, take care, have fun, and bye-bye.